Good morning. 25th, 2018 meeting of the Rutherford County Regional Planning Commission. If you would stand with us, please. Commissioner Craig Lynch will lead us in our prayer and our pledge.
Pray with me, please. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and the beauty of the day and the beauty of the season, and we thank you for all the blessings you've given us, Heavenly Father. Thank you for this great country we live in, this great county we live in. The couple of weeks we come up with a holiday that shows what blessings we do have, Heavenly Father. The independence we have, the way we govern ourselves, we just thank you for that. The electoral process, we got so many freedoms, Heavenly Father, we just take them for granted. We thank you for them. We thank you for being here this morning. We pray what we say here this morning will be beneficial to all and will be fair to all, and just be with us, Heavenly Father, through this meeting. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
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 I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Call the roll, please, Gail.
Rhonda Allen. Here. Jim Aberwater.
Here.
Lee Bogle. David Jones. Mike Cush.
Here.
Craig Lynch.
Here.
Chip Pinion.
Here.
Charlotte P. Here. Pattis Reed.
Here.
Mike Blatt.
Here.
Jeff Phillips.
Present.
You have quorum.
Thank you, Gail. This time we need to approve the minutes of our March 26th meeting. I'll call on our Vice Chair, Mike Cush.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to say, Craig, thank you for that awesome prayer. With the holiday coming up, those were very good words, and I appreciate that. Mr. Chairman, I have reviewed the March meeting minutes, and they are in order, so I would make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the March 26, 2018 minute meetings. All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We have one item that's been withdrawn. It's item 6B4, 18-2062 for Robert and Leanne Kimberlin, I'm sorry. We will not be discussing that today. Under new business, item 6A1, items that are submitted for preliminary plan approval. 6A1, 18-1007, Pinnacle Hills, Section 2, 9 lots on 5+ acres zoned RM, located off Rurik Lane. Park Trust Development is the applicant. Doug?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and good morning, members of the commission. Hope everybody's doing well today. This first subdivision preliminary plan that we have before you is for the Pinnacle Hill subdivision, as you stated. This plan was originally approved back in 2006. Section 1, which is pretty much built out, was recorded back in August of 2007, but no further sections were developed. You will see to the north of Pinnacle Hills, you'll see the retreat of Pinnacle Hills, which is a subdivision that was rezoned as a PUD, which is a separate entity from the subdivision we're talking about now. But you can see that the Section 2, just a small continuation of the subdivision right there that Mike was just circling. Really, all the comments that we had, it was pretty straightforward, but they were all been addressed. So with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Make a motion to approve, subject to all your comments.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion to approve Pinnacle Hill Section 2, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. Item 6B, submitted for final plat approval, 6B1, second re-subdivision of Pleasant View Farms and Track 11 for Vault Properties. The item number is 18-2033. Revisions, 5 lots on 39.16 acres zoned RL, located off Pleasant View Drive. D. Corletto Ward Farms is the applicant. Doug?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. This probably looks familiar. This was approved originally by the Planning Commission back in April of this year. Due to some restrictions in the property covenants, the applicant is bringing this back with one less lot than originally approved. It really had to do with they were creating basically an additional lot out of this area back through here, which is part of the Vought property. So what they have done is they kind of shifted the lot lines around a little bit, and they have lost one lot. So instead of 6 lots like they originally had, they have 5. This plat has been reviewed. There really weren't many comments to begin with because they pretty much had all been addressed during the April review. But what few comments we had, they have taken care of, and this plat's in good order. We'd recommend approval.
Thank you, Doug.
Make a motion to approve, subject to all staff comments.
Gail, if you would note that I didn't participate in the discussion, I'm not going to vote.
I'll second, but I have one question. There's a plat note number 12 that says the existing barn on Lot 7 is agricultural nature.
Yes.
Is there a reason that note's made?
If the accessory structure were not agricultural in nature, then the building is not supposed to be there before a principal structure is, because there's a specific regulation forbidding that. But if it's an agriculturally related structure, then it doesn't apply. So that was why we asked them to add that.
How would you handle that if you,
What we've done in the past, because we run into this occasionally, is they could either remove the structure, because sometimes that happens, they plan on removing it. So as long as they mark it to be removed, we'll know that, so that's fine. Or if they want to keep the structure but use it for personal storage instead of agricultural purposes, before they record the plat, we'll ask them to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for a special exception.
Other questions? We have a motion and a second for item 18-2033, the re-subdivision of Pleasant View Farms. All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. 6B2, item 18-2034, the David A. Haynes and Tammy J. Haynes property, 2 lots on 3.9 acres zone RM located off Shady Lane. David and Tammy Haynes are the applicants, includes dedication of right-of-way. Doug?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. The applicant would like to subdivide the subject property into 2 separate lots. 2-lot subdivisions can typically be approved administratively, but when right-of-way dedication is being proposed as part of any plat, that does require Planning Commission approval based on our subdivision regulations. The plat has been amended to address our comments. It's in very good order. With that, we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. We do recommend approval.
You're saying because the driveway goes through the other lot, that's why we have to see it?
No, it's because of the right-of-way along the frontage of Shady Lane. Chances are, well, it looks like it, yeah, the property deed went to the center line of the road as opposed to having the road actually be right-of-way. So we're asking to dedicate that portion as right-of-way, even, they can't use it anyway. But-
Okay.
And just as a kind of a sidebar, that's something we're going to talk about during other business. I'll get into that more at the time as far as that particular requirement.
and Mike, there are no drainage issues because plat note 14 talks about there not being a culvert for Lot 2 because there are no existing ditches and no parent drainage features, so you don't have any drainage issues.
Yeah, you need a ditch to have a culvert.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 18-2034, the Haynes property. Any other questions?
Who seconded that? Gail, we neither one of us called. Who seconded
Mike.
that? Mike, okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Any other questions? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? The motion to approve carries. Thank you. Item 6B3, 18-2060, Compton Road, unrecorded survey. 1 lot on 4.4 acres zone RM located off East Compton Road. Rick Mansfield is the applicant. Includes a waiver for off-site soils easement. Doug?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. This is an unusual situation, so I'll try to explain it. A portion of this property, about 3 acres, was transferred to CUD back in 2007 for a water tank project, which is directly to the south of the subject property. The transfer in and of itself wasn't the issue, but when it was made, it made the subject property less than 5 acres in size. At that time, a subdivision plat should have been done, but none ever was. So this plat will remedy the situation as far as having a lot that was created illegally. There is also an off-site soils waiver, as you stated, on this. There's a easement or a soil site on this that benefits adjoining property. So due to this waiver, we couldn't approve this administratively. This plat really was in good order after addressing our comments, but because of that off-site soils waiver, that is something that we can't approve a plat when it's on there. So, at least administratively. So with that, they have met our comments, addressed everything that we've asked them to address. The plat's in good order, and this will correct the situation. We'll be happy to answer any questions.
Make a motion to approve. Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve 18-2060 Compton Road unrecorded survey. All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. 6B4, 18-2062 has been withdrawn. 6B5, 18-2064 Mary Neely, 2 lots subdivision, 2 lots located on 4 acres on RM, located off Shady Lane. Mark and Mary Neely are the applicants. Doug?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. As you stated, this property is located along Shady Lane. The applicant's proposing to subdivide the property into 2 lots. Right-of-way dedication, this is another one that was required as part of the plat, which does require Planning Commission approval. Our comments were addressed. They were actually addressed after our initial review. This plat is in good order, and we would recommend approval.
Any questions?
I move for the approval with staff comments. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the Neely 2-lot subdivision, 18-2064. Any other questions? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? The motion to approve carries. Thank you. Item 6B6, 18-2066, Creeks Bend, Section 1, Phase 6, 27 lots on 13.42 acres, zoned RM, located off Bakerview Street. Silver Hill Partners is the applicant. Doug?
Yes, sir, thank you. The preliminary plat for this section was approved by the Planning Commission back in 2006. This final plat does appear to be consistent with that approved preliminary plat. A fire hydrant waiver has been included as part of this plat approval due to the fact that the water lines in this area cannot support the hydrants. You'll notice on the plat that there is a certificate there for sprinkler systems, which would be required should the waiver be granted for this. Most of our comments, really the vast majority, have been addressed. There are a couple of outstanding comments. I'm going to let Mike discuss those just briefly.
A couple of comments that we had outstanding. We'd like the surveyor to tie down this sinkhole / drainage easement that would be hard to replicate in the field with these curvy lines. So just give us some straight lines somehow and with the bearings and distance to tie that down. That's kind of ambiguous the way it is right there. Let's see.
That note number was wrong on
The note number.
the, yeah, scoot over on the.
Okay.
The reference of the note number was incorrect. Another 23.
Oh, okay.
Well, looks like this one's fixed. Okay, well.
Okay. That seems to be the only big thing, is just to tie that down a little bit.
Now, did you say that's a sinkhole?
Yes. Yes. There's several out here. They've developed around those. Show you the contours. This is Bakerview Street right here that they're connecting to, which is right here. So it's this area right here, just a little bit north of Windy Hill Street. Just what they've had to do is make sure that the pads are up above this area, and then have geotech engineers to investigate the construction of that, houses around that.
Are those flagged as critical lots?
Yeah, they are.
I mean, there's a note 24 that talks about the geotechnical report, but it doesn't specifically refer to them as critical lots.
They added a note on there, the very last one.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it.
Yes,
I think
they have added a note. It doesn't show up on the image on your screen, but it says all lots immediately adjacent to a sinkhole will require a geotechnical report submitted to the county prior to obtaining building permits. And then we've asked them to list the lots to be specific.
Is there any advantage to using our terminology of those being identified as critical lots?
Yes, we could classify those as critical lots.
I think there's-
Make that-
yeah, I think
Have
there's
them
an
marked as
advantage
such,
to
yeah.
that. And then explain number 25 to me. I don't know what those acronyms are.
Site minimum pad elevations, MPEs, and MFEs, minimum floor elevation, for this section are due to local drainage. So you've got an area, that sinkhole that'll fill up with water. It's not due to FEMA requirements, it's just
Gotcha.
local flooding that we have to
Okay.
be aware of.
Where most of this drain, Mike? Where's most of this stuff?
To Fall Creek, not far from here. And if we did some dye tracings with Dr. Ogden, you'd probably see that they're heading that way. This is Fall Creek right here, right at the county line.
With the preliminary having been approved so long ago, what kinds of changes were made to this one? I mean, do they need to update right-of-way access, or, I mean, any specific, stormwater changes, anything like that?
Well, since this was started prior to our stormwater regulations, this is one of those older holdover where we essentially went straight to the stream. We've asked them to do, what they could to do some kind of treatment train, long grass swales or something before it gets to the creek. So, I mean, just anything we can to help out.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve. That's subject to all staff comments, I'm assuming. Rhonda?
Yes. So, yes, absolutely.
Very good. Any other questions? We have a motion and a second to approve 18-2066, Creeks Bend, Section 1, Phase 6. All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. Item 6B7, 18-2067, Davenport Station, Section 2, 28 lots on 9.69 acres zoned PRD located off Davenport Drive, BMCHTN. Are the applicants, Doug?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. The preliminary plat for this section was approved by the Planning Commission back in September of 2007. Section 1 was recently recorded, and lots have been released for construction, and this plat does appear to be consistent with the approved preliminary plat. We did have a number of comments after our initial review on this. Those comments, for the most part, have been addressed. There's just one small comment that I do want to point out, and I know it's kind of confusing because this was originally approved under the older zoning ordinance that we had, which, even though it was a PRD, Planned Residential Development, as you stated, it was a conditional use permit. It wasn't a separate zoning classification at that time like it is now. This area up in here, they still have it zoned PUD. It's actually zoned RM with the previously approved conditional use permit, so they can just update that. Beyond that, this plat is in good order, and with that, we'd recommend approval.
This does nothing to speed up the
Traffic light.
light, the traffic light, does it?
This particular section doesn't. Now, and Mike, obviously, if I'm misstating something, please feel free to jump in.
Right,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we
Go
are reviewing the fourth section of the construction plans, and from the way it was approved before, the fourth section would connect to 231 across from Rucker Road. So that's going to be one of our comments is to, we need to coordinate that. And if you remember, Rucker Landing on the east side of 231 also is reliant on that, that light, that traffic signal. So that's something we're trying to coordinate and getting that signal rolling quickly.
Will you review the acronyms used on the agenda?
Yes. I'm sorry. I know it gets kind of confusing. For Davenport Station, it's zoned, well, technically it's zoned RM, because under the old regulations, this property was actually zoned R15, which is really what RM is now, was the old R15. When it was originally approved, it was approved with a conditional use permit for a planned residential development, PRD. So, technically, it's zoned RM, because that's what the new designation is, but it has a previously approved conditional use permit for the planned residential development. There's a couple of them like this out there. This is one of them. There's thankfully not many, because that gets confusing to have to type out as well, so. But that's what that means.
Thank you.
Doug and Mike, on general note number 1, it says this final plat is to create 28 residential lots. But as I look at the lot count, unless I'm missing a number here, it looks like we start at lot 47 and then make the loop and finish at 74. And if my math is right, that's only 27 lots. So what am I missing there? We seem to be one lot short.
Did you get 28 when you counted that?
Yeah.
I think when you do the math, there's only 27 difference between them, but you have to count 47. You have to actually count the lot. If you actually
To get
count
the
one
end-
by one to get the end. Right.
Okay.
So, but if you count each one, it is 28.
So math lies.
Is that new math? Yeah.
New math, yeah.
Other questions?
Motion, you ready for a motion? Yes. Motion to approve, subject to staff comment.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve 18-2067 Davenport Station, Section 2. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you.
I have a general question before we move on. Since this one's so old, we didn't get pattern books back then, did we?
We did. They weren't nearly as detailed as they are today.
Does this have one? Does this?
There is one for it, yes, ma'am. Actually, well, and plus it's been amended so many times over the course of time, but back in 2007, like I said, they weren't nearly as detailed, so we do have something on file for it.
The codes has something to refer back to?
Yes, yes.
Item 6B8, 18-2068 Charles Hamby Jr. subdivision, 3 lots on 11.18 acres on RM located off Lake Brook Drive, which is private. Patricia Hamby is the applicant. Doug?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. As you stated, Lake Brook Drive is a private drive in this area. The applicant is proposing to subdivide to subdivide the 2 tracts to get 3 additional lots. This subdivision, in particular, this private easement and road, already has a considerable amount of lots on it. By today's standards, we wouldn't allow this unless it were a planned development. So they are asking for waivers for the additional lots. I've had some conversations with the applicant's representative and attorney about this, just because of the additional lots. They've done a little bit of deed research. My biggest concern was just making sure this wasn't some sort of an exclusive easement and there were no other lots that were permitted to be subdivided off of this. All the research indicates that no such exclusivity exists, if I said that right. But beyond that, the comments have been addressed. Again, this will require a waiver for the number of lots, the easement material and whatnot, but I'm comfortable with this now. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. As part of this, if you look at the plat, they are actually, in addition to making the lots, the 3 lots at the front, if you can scroll down just a little bit, Mike, back up the other way, I'm sorry. They're removing that property line. The revised plat that we have in the materials shows that or on the iPads rather, show that this line is going to be dissolved between the 2 larger tracts and make it one big tract. So again, I'm comfortable with this at this point. So with that, I'd recommend approval. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
How many total lots does this give this easement?
Let's see. I got the 2 tracts, the 3 lots, and then that's about 15 by the looks of it.
The public Lake Brook Drive ends
Right
about
about
this
there.
corner right here, and then it becomes private back into here.
And what's the condition of that road now? Or did,
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure. I think it's paved back there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's,
You have a full 50 feet all the way back, a full 50 feet of dedicated right-of-way.
well, it's not right away. It's just a private easement. So
Is that road up to county standards if it needed to become a public road?
without doing testing and
We'd have
whatnot,
to-
we'd have
we'd
to go out there and do that.
Bore and see how deep of a paving section it is and the quality.
This feels like one of those developments that's walking like a duck, quacking like a duck. It's a development.
Well, yes, I mean, I'm not going to argue that at all. Unfortunately, most of it's been there, for quite a number of years. This predates either Mike or myself. Quite frankly, that larger subdivision in the back's been there for quite some time.
At some point, people have to just comply with the regulations. That's why they're there. This is exactly the scenario that we were trying to
Right,
avoid.
right, and I agree. And like I said, under today's regulations, if somebody were to come in and say, I want to put a private easement with all these lots, I'd tell them you have to go for a planned development. That's the only way we would allow it.
Is this going to be another situation where people get these lots, and then they're going to come in and ask why my road's not part of the county system?
Well, I certainly couldn't stop that from happening, but, it's very clear on the plat that this is a private road. This is not county-maintained.
Does there need to be a note on the plat that indicates that?
I was about to suggest that. If you want, we can condition this upon them putting a note on there saying that, this is not a county road and therefore is privately maintained. So if that would make you more comfortable, we'd be happy to do that.
I would feel very comfortable with that, because I have two right around me right now, and I'm continually having people knock on my door wanting to know why my road is not
Maintained.
part of the county system, whatever, and I have to sit there and explain that continually.
Right.
And we keep doing, when you have this right here, you have the unexpected to come and buy the lots and build a very nice house, and then they want to know, why are my windows dusty? Why can't I have a gravelled road? Why can't I have a paved road? Then you have to go and explain, well, when it was developed, they did not go by what is required. And I think we do need a note on this.
Doug, is this a gated community?
I don't think so. I don't think it's gated.
Anybody can drive on these roads, so if I were one of the other homeowners, I guess, that I suppose is in, maybe that perhaps in their deed that they have to help pitch in money to repair that road, I'd be reluctant to allow other homes in the neighborhood to use that road without knowing if they were gonna chip in to repair the road also. I mean, is that just a civil thing and we don't have a whole lot of?
Well, yeah, I think to a large extent, I think you're right. Again, and that was one of my biggest concerns looking at this, because we've run into that in the past, where somebody wants to divide off a private easement, come to find out that it's more of an exclusive easement. But the research that was done, that I discussed with the representative of the applicant that spoke with me about it, they did some pretty intense research on that and said never could find anything. It just said it was exclusively for this subdivision and that was it. But I would agree. Typically, yes, that's what you see. You see everybody has to pitch in. So if nothing else, you would think these people would have to pitch in as well, and maybe contribute their portion of those costs for maintaining the road.
And we don't know if there's a note on those other deeds saying they have to maintain the road.
Without looking at every single one, no, I don't have that. I'm sorry.
Nice road.
there's no homeowners association or anything that they?
Well, there may be in that subdivision further on,
Right.
right here, I don't know, but I would imagine there has to be something, because, they have to get to the subdivision. There must be something on there.
Should there be a homeowner association on this? Or
Well, again, by today's regulations, we would require that. I can't speak of what happened, like I said, when this was approved, this was long before my time. Without really going into more in-depth research into it, that'd be the only way to find out if there was something. I would imagine there has to be something. Don't believe the county maintains this road this far back.
I'd like to know if this is part of a homeowners association, if these lots are included in that other homeowner association.
Okay.
to guarantee some sort of maintenance agreement on that.
Well, I mean, if that's the case,
I'm with
we'd be
Pettis.
happy to,
I don't want 20
yeah.
years from now, these
Right.
people's road to be all torn up by general traffic going up and down, and we have to come in and foot the bill for that road because
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't done right the first time. I guarantee you this developer didn't discount the lots in it because it was a
Mm-hmm.
private road.
I mean, if you'd like, we can defer action on this and let us take a look into it a little bit more.
I'd like to move for a deferral on it.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to defer 18-2068 Charles Hamby Jr. subdivision. Any other discussion or questions on it?
Well, before, there is actually a note.
On the
I'm sorry,
plat, adjacent to it, which is the falls at East Fork. I don't know about this, where we're subdividing, but the subdivision with the roundabout, thank you, does have a note on it, says that a homeowners association will be created to maintain the roadway and median and shall be filed with the Tennessee Secretary of State, approved and recorded with the Rutherford County Register of Deeds. Will not be maintained by Rutherford County, and therefore the homeowners association shall be responsible for the maintenance and drive in perpetuity.
And that includes the part taking it to the subdivision.
It
Well-
begins.
Or part outside the subdivision.
Right.
Right,
that they're-
so, like, yes, ma'am, so it does not include the property we're looking at right now, but the section farther to the east does say this verbiage.
I'd still like to defer to know if there's a homeowner.
I said, we can still research. I mean, the plat's on, the note's on the plat, which is good. This was done back in 2005, it looks like, but we can at least do some research confirming that that is in existence and see how that's going to work, and then be able to have an answer for you at the next meeting.
All right, look, stay on that page. Look at the far bottom left-hand note. Golly, it is Monday. Yeah. So
in
that's
that-
the starting
In
and
that development, they want it built to county
Yeah.
standards.
yeah.
Do we know if it was built to county standards?
I would have to go back and research, like Doug said, that was before our time. It looks like it's pretty good shape. I don't know if it's been topped out, just looking at it from Google Earth. But it did look like it was, could have been built to standards.
Well, we're looking at this in 2 weeks instead of pushing them on out for months.
We can, I mean, if that's what you'd like to do. I mean,
Yeah.
we can at least make a report, if nothing else, but that should give us enough time to do what we need to do on this.
Appears to me to be in the interest of the people that passed the turnaround right there. Or where the sign, where y'all showed the sign earlier. Then they've got a section that they have to drive across. They're not part of the homeowners association, or could be. That's the way it appears to me. You understand what I'm saying, Mike?
Yes.
It'd be I think it'd be in everybody's best interest if we determine between the end of the county road and that turnaround there, roundabout, whatever you want to call it. The first one, not the back.
Right, you talking about where it elbows?
Right there, what you're showing right there.
Yes, sir.
From there back west,
Back to where it
public
becomes a county
section.
road.
back to the
yeah.
public section. Determine who keeps that up and whether it's part of that homeowners association or not. Back to right
Basically,
there.
that stretch right in
I
there.
think this
yeah.
is the end of the public section, if I measured correctly from the road book. Okay.
All clear?
So it looks like too, when they create these lots, the one where you said the property line is going away, that's gonna leave approximately 44 acres. All right.
That sounds about right, yes,
I
ma'am.
guarantee you this is coming back for
Mhm.
more subdivisions. I guarantee it.
Other questions or comments? We have a motion and a second to defer 18-2068 Charles Hamby Jr. subdivision. All those in favor of that motion to defer, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? The motion to defer carries. Thank you. Submitted for site plan approval, item 6C1, 18-3013, Watts Site Plan, new construction of 5,000 square feet of industrial space on 10 acres, zoned LI, located off John Bragg Highway. Martin Watts is the applicant. Doug.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. This property was rezoned to light industrial back in April of last year. The applicant is moving forward with his plans to build an office and a shop for repair and maintenance. They understand that a subdivision plat will be required. I've already looked at a preliminary version of that. I know that they are working on that. We did have a number of comments during our review. For the most part, the comments have been addressed. I think there's a couple of drainage things that Mike would like to touch on. But from the planning standpoint, really just only a couple outstanding items are the photometric plan, because they are going to have some site lighting will be required. They don't have that yet, but that's not unusual for this stage. Usually they'll submit that when they submit their architectural plans, which is what they are planning to do, so I'm fine with that. The other is they're still working on the landscape plan. We've had some conversations with the applicant's design engineer on that. They do have a landscape plan. They are showing a proposal. It needs a little more work, a little more detail, but it's not something that I think that the Plan Commission needs to necessarily take action on. That's something we can handle at a staff level. We've had some conversations with them, so they know what we're expecting and what needs to happen moving forward. But with that, I'll turn it over to Mike, just a couple of items to look at.
So, just some minor things on the construction plans for this site, just the size and type of the pipe of the pond outlet. They do show it on the detail, but they don't show it on the construction plans itself. And then they're proposing to use a water quality standalone unit to meet our water quality requirements. And I've been in discussion with the design engineer. Those proprietary units are very, very expensive, and you have to have a perpetual maintenance company to come out and vacuum them out a couple times a year. So they have the room to meet our water quality requirements, and then just want the opportunity to work with them a little bit more to see if we can't modify that to do something on site where they don't need a proprietary unit to meet our water quality requirements. There's nothing wrong with the water quality units. It's just that they're very expensive, and they take the requirement to have vacuumed out every couple months. Well, 6 months, every 6 months, something like that. So. But other than that, the plans are in good order. And
if it's more economical to do it the way you're describing, what's the advantage to offering?
Well, if you have a really small site where you don't have a lot of room to do anything, you have to do one of these water quality units to meet the water quality standards. We go by the Metro Stormwater Management Manual, and a lot of urban areas, you've got a lot of pavement, a lot of building, and you don't have room for a big pond, an area for the water to absorb into, and you have to use these units to meet the water quality standards. But this area, they have a lot of real estate to work with, and I think they can, if they look at some kind of treatment train, some kind of wet pond, something that they can meet the standards that a simple mowing every few, will maintain, and an inspection once a year that is a lot more practical, a lot more economical than buying one of these units.
I don't ever really remember us discussing a plat with the water quality unit. It seems like there was one that was a gas station many years ago, but that's the only one. So it's not a very common thing.
No, and like I said, they're very expensive to meet the standards. Essentially, it's a unit that the first flush will swirl around in, and the sediment will drop out. Mm-hmm. But like I said, that sediment builds up over time. It collects trash, and my biggest thing is that they're very expensive, and you have to have a maintenance company come in, vacuum them out twice a year.
How large are they?
It's like a large manhole.
Depends on how big your site is.
Right.
The smaller,
you could have some smaller ones that are pretty compact. This one has a pretty decent sized footprint of asphalt, so it would be pretty substantial.
Do they use electricity or are they?
It's
just
gravity. It's they're designed to the water to swirl around and clean the sediment out. Give it a good.
Essentially, you've got, pardon me, essentially you've got a screen, you've got to vacuum out every now and then.
Yes, sir.
Do
But-
they have plans for the remainder of the property, and that's the reason they don't want to dedicate it to that?
At this time, not that I'm aware of, it really is just the office and the shop, and, you know, if they have plans for expansion in the future, the applicant's present.
Yeah, that's
So,
what I'm talking about.
but, yeah, so, I mean, it could be that he has plans for the remainder of the property, just not right now.
See, this
Will
is
you
the
ask them
area
how
that they're proposing. Let me go to the grading sheet. Okay, here's the proposed pond, and this standalone proprietary unit was going to be part of the outlet structure. And part of the maintenance of it, you have to get a vacuum truck with a long enough hose or a way to drive around to that unit to vacuum it out. So I'm not against them. I just think that they have the real estate, the room to spread the pond out, make it a wet pond or some kind of treatment train with a grass swale, leaving the site to meet our standards.
Did we not have a unit like this several years back? Like a Dollar General or something was doing
I think it was on Shelbyville Highway, if
Yep.
I remember right.
Yep.
Yes, sir. I think you're absolutely right.
out there towards Christiana,
Yes,
wasn't it?
yeah, I believe so.
This one, somebody asked about size. That one means that's a 5-foot diameter. So they're anywhere from 4 to 10 feet, depending on how big your site is. And a lot of people put them upstream of your detention pond to actually clean the sediment before it goes
Gets
into
into
the
the
pond.
Yeah.
That way your pond maintenance is much less, so you don't have to clean your pond out as often.
Right.
So
So that captures, like I said, the first flush, the lower rainfall events. If you've got it on the outlet end of the pond, like Mike's saying, it's got to be able to handle a bigger flow, it's got to be designed to have a bypass built into it. So, like I said, it will work. It's just, they're very expensive.
Can we ask the applicant to come up so we can find out what their plans are?
Address that. I mean,
Is Mr. Watts here?
You
You the- Since they asked for the applicant, I guess that's you. You have the representative you want up with you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Please tell us who you are.
Martin Watts, I'm the applicant.
Josh Thompson, St. John Engineering.
Okay.
You've heard the discussion. Do you have any comments you want to add about, is there a reason that you went this direction versus another?
At this time, we're willing to redo the design there and eliminate the vortex unit, so it's not a big deal for us to redesign that pond.
like I said, it's used in urban areas where you don't have a lot of room, a lot of real estate to work with. This, you've got plenty
Yeah,
of room to
my
work.
concern for you was if you had plans to expand that building and now we've messed you up.
No, there's plenty of room to, I guess that would be the east side of it. That's just an open field. Between that and the existing structure there's plenty of room. And even in behind it, but part of it behind it would be kind of that's mature trees, so I don't want to go back too far. It's a good barrier. So.
Now, do you plan on building behind those trees? Or
No, not really. That's kind of in a lower area. You've got the creek back there. That's Cripple Creek runs in behind it, and it's pretty rocky, so it's probably stay agriculture.
I've had people ask me about this because it's a scenic highway. They want to make sure. I don't know. Does that make a difference in landscaping because it's designated as a scenic highway?
Not really. There are some protections for regards to signage and things. We'll double check and look at that. We've run into this before with some of the other development up and down through there. A lot of the protections only apply to counties that aren't comprehensively zoned, which Rutherford County is, so there is a difference, because we've run into that not just here, but on other corridors as well. But since we're comprehensively zoned, a lot of those protections don't apply, but we'll make sure that everything's in compliance with what state and local requirements are when we get to that point.
And as we've talked about, protecting some of those scenic areas, those character areas, since we are comprehensively zoned, would there be an advantage to us looking at adding some language about additional landscape along these types of areas?
I think so, and actually, I know we've talked about that a little bit, and, on further conversations among staff, along with the mayor's office, seem to indicate that, rather than concentrating on just one
Corridor.
arterial corridor, we'd like to possibly look at all of them, and the suggestion was even made, maybe look at that as part of the long-range transportation plan update that we have.
Yeah, we might want to make a footnote and make that
Yeah.
an action plan.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for coming.
Be careful of traffic right there. You're aware of that.
I live
And
there.
how fast, how fast it goes.
Yeah, it does.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve, subject to all staff comments and working with staff on drainage and the photometric plan, et cetera.
Second.
Very good. Other discussion?
Yes. Now, this would increase traffic there? I mean, we had talked when it was rezoned, they talked about trucks going in and out. And we just mentioned traffic. Are there plans for lanes or a need for slow down lanes or? I know there is a need for lanes. I'm asking, do we have there definitely is a need.
From what we've been told, they only plan like one semi a month or something like that, so it's not a lot of trucks coming in and out. And they have indicated with the truck turning templates, the turning movements in and out, and their driveway will connect to this median crossover here, so they'll have adequate opportunity to get in and out. So we thought with just the low level of trucks coming in and out, they didn't require turn lanes, acceleration, deceleration.
Okay.
When we make those decisions, I mean, it's kind of the honor system. So what do we do in hindsight if we find out there's 5 a day?
Well, I mean, honestly, at that point, if they ever come in with some sort of an expansion or something, because I would anticipate that with increased activity would probably be increased buildings, increased footprint, if you will. So any expansion that would come in, we would just evaluate at that time. Say, okay, look, if you're wanting to pull in an additional, like you said, 4 or 5 trucks a day or something like that, we're going to have to see something right here.
And it's difficult. We
Right.
can't zone for every hypothetical.
Right.
There's some things we have to make a decision based on trust, but that was just kind of my point is
Right.
we don't know.
Yeah,
We don't
from
know
all
the traffic
indications, and actually, I've had some conversations with the applicant about just how much he really plans to build right now. He might just concentrate on the office and not the shop right now, in which case, truck traffic would be minimal at best. So it would just be, private passenger vehicles coming in and out, which that wouldn't require those kind of improvements. But as, and hopefully for his sake, hopefully business goes well and he'll want to expand. And if that is the case, then as we see more and more activity, I think we would have a leverage at that point when they wanted to expand.
Other questions? We have a motion and a second to approve 18-3013 Watts site plan. Other comments? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. Thank you for the discussion as well. Item 6C2, Watercrest Subdivision 18-3007, new construction of 68 townhomes, approximately 167,500 square feet on 33 acres zoned PUD located off Amaville Road. Amaville Acquisitions 2 is the applicant. Doug.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. This PUD was most recently amended by the Board of Commissioners back in May of last year. You'll recall that was when they actually went with the townhome units. The applicant is proposing to move forward with that portion of the development, which is on the west side of Almaville Road, and you can see the site plan in your, on your iPads or on your screen in front of you. A portion of Watercrest, as you can see, is going to be a public road. Mike, if you could kind of mark where, right about that point, be public, and then private beyond that particular spot. We had quite a few issues that needed to be addressed on this site plan. For the most part, those comments have been addressed. There are a couple of things I think still need to be addressed, one of them being the setbacks for this particular set of units right here. With this being a public road, this does have to maintain a 30-foot setback. Now, they have taken that back just a little bit, but I think they're going to have to take it back just a little bit more to make sure that this is going to be compliant with the front setback. This is still going to be within the required 30-foot front setback that they identified in their pattern book. So that's one of the bigger issues that we have. We also have asked them to provide a soil chart. In response to the comments, they said one was included, but just looking over the site plan, neither Mike or myself could find where that was, so we just want a little bit more information. They did have something on there which identified soil type, I think, but beyond that, we were looking for area, MPI, those kind of things. From our standpoint, those are the major issues. They are adding some turn lane improvements along the frontage there at Almaville Road. I think there's a separate sheet for that even, but I'm going to turn it over to Mike, because I know he's got some engineering comments as well that he would like to discuss.
Okay. All right. The flood study for this property ends, I think, midway in the property. In just a second, it'll come up. See, it ends right here, and this is the end of the published study. So what we've asked them to do is to either continue this on, or we'll have to treat the townhomes like a Zone A, which is you establish the highest adjacent grade to the building and add 3 feet to the existing grade. So, and it shouldn't be an issue on this. They have, if I can turn on the contours.
Say that again, do something and add 3 feet.
When it's in a Zone A, in a FEMA Zone A, which elevations aren't determined, you take the highest adjacent grade next to the building, and then you add 3 feet. So it's just like a factor of safety in there. This,
As opposed to it normally being a foot above that
well,
level.
that's because we know the base flood elevation for the study. But if you look at where they're proposing to build, they're building on, I guess, the east side of this bank, and it is several feet above the west side of the bank. And it shouldn't be an issue with meeting flood requirements. Let's see if I get my map to follow up. So you've got a 610 over here. They're building around 630 and above. So they're going to be substantially higher than this plane on the other side of Stewart's Creek. So because the flood study stops, we have to say, okay, either continue on with the flood study or treat these buildings as they're in Zone A, which they are, an unnumbered, unknown elevation. So it shouldn't be an issue. And with their grading plan, we just wanted to bring that up. And they have added minimum pad elevation, so we'll need to adjust that and review that with the construction plans. Let's see what else. Okay, during the construction plans, we'll have to establish sediment traps, sediment basins to meet TDEX requirements. Where they're showing sediment traps on their construction plans, they have one at the very end of Watercrest Drive and one at the very entrance. This area will need to be, I guess, it'll be a moving design where they fill build upon fill, to make that slope work. So that'll be something we'll need to coordinate with them. Right now, the water is trying to get straight to the creek down this slope. So when they fill in this area, we'll just have to work with them during the construction phase to make sure that until this pond is built, that they have a sediment trap in place to meet the state requirements. So that's just a nitpicky thing that we'll need to work with them on the design. And then they have added some parking along the back here, but and Doug can probably address this better than I can, but it just seems like the guest parking is pretty far away from some of these units on the other end of the site, and I'm kind of concerned about parking on the street. They're only using I think 22 feet wide, 2 11-foot lanes. So, and they've got a garage and a driveway for each unit. Each unit will have 2 bedrooms. So, it's going to be
one car garage or two?
One car garage and a driveway out front that can park one. And that's how they're counting. They're counting one car in the garage and one in the driveway.
No more room in the driveway after that?
No more room in the driveway.
That's what you're concerned about?
Yeah.
If somebody comes to visit, or there's a third vehicle?
You know how St. Andrews is, you've got all those people parked on the street, and it's hard to get through there. That's kind of what I'm concerned about. If there's a fire in the back and there's a lot of cars parked on the road, how are we going to get emergency vehicles in and out?
That's exactly one of the questions that I had. And it looks like, you said 11 feet, but it looks like it's 12.
Well, it's 12 to the gutter pan.
Okay.
You can count that as well, but the asphalt's 11 foot from the center to the toe of the gutter. And then the face of curb is 12 feet. Yes, ma'am.
And so why are we doing a private road and a collector road? Because they've got 2 different widths noted there side by side. So the road size is going to change?
Well, yes. At the entrance, they've got a dedicated left turn lane coming out and a through and right on Watercrest Drive. The public portion will end here, and then the rest of this will be private.
Well, then they've got them labeled wrong, because it says the 26 foot is the private road and the 24 wide is the collector. If I wrote that down correctly.
Yes. Well, yeah, I think we asked for the public section to be a thicker paving. Yeah, I don't like how they put details on the cover page. It should be on the detail sheet.
But do you see what I'm saying? It looks like the numbers
Yes,
are
yes.
signed inappropriately.
Yes.
And then, while we're on roads, at the end of the Watercrest, it just stops. There's no, that doesn't look like it's wide enough for a turnaround.
Well, they could do a 3-point turn right there, and it doesn't extend, even though this is a private road, we still look at it in public eyes, but they still could back and make a 3-point turn and turn around.
Why would this be a private road?
That's
how
they proposed
the
it.
plan development. That's what they wanted for the private drive.
Gated? Is this thing gated? Is it gated?
I don't think it's gated. No, sir. That doesn't appear to be. There's nothing on the site plan that would indicate it's gated.
Okay, the way you answered that question made me feel like maybe we can't make this a public road now, because there's some things that I guess I just feel like we don't get into the nitty gritty as we do in a site plan, because that's one of the pieces of comfort we always have is, well, they're going to be bringing a site plan forward. So can we make that a county road? Because I feel like when you got that many people on it, that does not need to be a private road.
It'd be required to be built to county standard anyway.
But again, we're talking about the maintenance issue and all that. That's a lot of traffic.
Right, I understand.
Yeah.
I guess I wasn't quite finished with my thought.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I don't think there'd be anything prohibiting them from asking for it to be a county road. I mean, it says it was gonna be private road in their planned development booklet.
And that's my
But
question.
At the same time, you know, if they wanted to dedicate it and it was up to county standard, I don't see why we couldn't take it unless there
But,
was some.
but the flip side is, can we ask for it to be a county road? Or did, or
Oh,
did
you
that?
want it- You want to actually require them to. be a
Yes,
county road.
that's, yeah.
Okay, okay,
Would that impact the
Does it change the
setbacks,
parking
though?
situation?
Well, that, yeah. it's
No,
gonna-
no, but I just said while we're on roads. Yeah.
Would it impact the setbacks?
Well,
Or
it
are
would-
they
right. See, and-
established?
Well, this is part of what would happen with that. Right now, their planned development booklet says their front setback, since it's a private development, will be 30 foot off of the back of the curb throughout the private drive. If you were to make this a public road, of course, it's got right of way. On a public road, the setback's not determined from the back of the curb, it's determined from the property line. So instead of measuring back from back of the curb, you're measuring from the property line, that's gonna eat into all those units. I mean, the setback's gonna go right in the middle of those units. Kind of like on 1701, 1704, when you look at that, that minimum setback line's gonna cut right through a portion of those lots.
So it's
I'm
gonna-
less worried about making it a county road as the width. Like you said, St. Andrews is a nightmare, and you want to prevent that. Because they are going to park on the road. You know, with only two parking spaces, they are going to park on the road.
Now, there's some opportunities to maybe do some parallel parking. Say in this area here, you might be able to get a couple spots here. You might get a spot or two here. It's just, my mouse would catch up to me. But along the road, I'm thinking we need to look at some additional guest parking. They have added some in that loop, but that's so far away from the other end of the development, it's going to be tricky in this area here.
Mike, do we have
Then we gotta
a
enforce it.
design standard for
Who's got to enforce that?
parking or spaces for vehicles, say, you know, so many, certain ratio per bedroom or
We do.
or anything
Yeah.
like that?
It's basically, it's 2 per unit when you've got 2 bedrooms. Now, I mean, what they're showing on here, I mean, counting the garage space and the driveway, which is how they did it, I mean, they are meeting the parking requirement as far as that. In fact, they're, with those extra spaces, they're going beyond what would be
I wonder
required.
if our design requirement is high enough then, because, you know, my daughter lives in a townhome community like this, and it's impossible to go visit and find a place to park. It's just, you know, because there are people that have teenagers and they have 3 cars or they don't want to park one behind the other so that their wife can't get out of the garage without moving the other vehicle, so they take up one of the visitor parking places. There's just no place to come visit.
No parking on the street sign would be just a wasted sign, wouldn't it?
Most townhouses
Private
don't.
drive
Yeah.
especially, I mean, who's gonna enforce it?
It would have to be self-enforced by
And they
homeowners
usually don't allow
association
it
or
anyway.
manager.
If someone is parked on the street and an emergency vehicle comes, fire truck or other, you know, ambulance, whatever, could they get by with the way this is designed?
It would be tricky. I mean,
Well, you know, a lot of that assumes if you've got cars parked on both sides of the road, yeah, that might be a problem. If you just have one car parked here, one parked here, I mean, certainly over there, but that way, it just, you know, it's what's the situation we're talking about?
and another issue is trash collection. I mean, if you've got a trash cart, and people are parked on the road, the trash truck can't get to, the automated trash truck can't get to the cart, so that might be something else we need to look at.
I think Matt's got some questions.
Or some answers.
Sorry.
I rarely have answers, but as far as the parking, we can look to see if there's some opportunities to spread that around, but I believe that whenever we ran the PUD through, we were pretty tight on the site just because of the way the soils are pretty scattered around the site, but we'll be happy to go back and look and see if there's opportunity to scatter that around the site rather than have it all concentrated at the back. You know, as far as the comparison to St. Andrews, these are two completely different streets between St. Andrews and this. This is a cul-de-sac serving a single neighborhood. St. Andrews is a major collector in our street, and these streets are as wide as any public street we've got in the county. So if we've got a problem with fire trucks getting around with people parking on the street here, we'll have the same thing in every other residential neighborhood. It does have to be policed. I would say that an HOA, if they so care, they have about as much ability to enforce that as our sheriff's department has time to enforce that on the public streets. You just need one nosy neighbor in this neighborhood, and they'll start handing out fines and enforcing it that way. It is very much a self-police thing. The difference between these private streets and the private streets you're mentioning earlier is this is going to be established on the front end. The HOAs today are much more sophisticated than they were, 20, 30 years ago whenever the original street in the other neighborhood was set up. The developer will have to pre-fund some of this. These neighbors will be managed by a third-party management company, so it's not going to be just the homeowners themselves. So there's quite a bit of difference between this street and the others. Townhomes are typically in our community are by and large usually private streets. We've only had a couple of townhouse communities that are developed on public streets, and even then they still wind up having some private elements such as alleys to access their garages and so forth. In addition, the trash that was brought up, that'd be a private pickup, so they can actively enforce the ability to get there, or they'll have to start hauling their own trash off. So I would say they would want to have that ability to access that can. And the good thing is that's usually done Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, when everybody's at work, so you don't typically have that issue. So I'll be happy to answer any other questions. The typical section detail, we do have that correct on the detail sheet. We didn't update it on the master plan like Mike said, so we'll get that part updated. And we'll be happy to look at the flood profile through there to help establish those minimum pads, minimum floors that Mike was talking about too.
There's the land they're building on so high, it's not going to be an issue. So I feel comfortable with that.
Lots 2 and 3 are dedicated to CUD. So where's this step going to be? Is it going to be on 3?
So some of the soils are going to be on lot 2, the sand filters on lot 3, and some more drip fills and soils are on lot 3 as well.
And then just so you know, on the parking issue, your job is to help the developer yield as many as he can, and I definitely appreciate that. One of the concerns that I have is, again, the livability of these neighborhoods and making sure that they age well.
Right.
And so there's part of me, I understand what you're talking about in terms of self-policing, but there's some of this where if we can prevent it on the front end, then that's the more responsible thing to do.
Yes, ma'am. And like I said, we'll be happy to go back and look, see if there's some places we can squeeze that in that wasn't included in the PUD, but we'll be happy to do that part. We can look, and if we can squeeze in 2, we'll squeeze in 2. If we can squeeze in 10 or rearrange some of these ones at the back, then we'll be happy to do that too. We were also looking at maybe the back, that access is more of our amenity area, so thought that might be a higher concentration need for that there. And then in reality, it's a pretty small neighborhood, so it's very walkable. So it's not a long walk. I know nobody likes to do that, but if those are visitor spaces, it would not be a terribly long walk.
This HOA would also, this visitor space would be where I would probably park my 3rd car. So you're talking about the nosy neighbor that would be watching my 3rd car, right?
That's possible. He may be looking out for you there, keeping any crime down.
So all the parking spaces would be filled up with my 3rd car.
If you so choose to have a 3rd car, I guess that's possible.
What's the PU acronym? Open space and PU easement?
Public utility, yes, ma'am.
I'd like to make a motion to defer till we see a plan for the parking and how the drainage is going to work.
I think we would like to but just be able to work with staff like that since the plan is compliant with the PUD.
Right, I'm just still not comfortable with the livability of it, the way the parking situation is laid out and the road width.
Is that a motion?
It is a motion, yes.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to defer. Is there any other comments? Any other questions?
And our goal in, what's our stated goal in the deferment? To get more parking spaces?
It was to address parking and also to have the drainage plan completed.
Right. And this is kind of what I was talking about, this area in the back. You can see it's a pretty substantial fill slope. And once it's all constructed, they'll have a nice diversion berm going to this detention pond. But as they're building it, they'll have to build a pond and slope as they bring that ground up. So that's just something we'll have to work with the contractor on. But other than that, with the stormwater detention ponds they have in place, it does meet our requirements.
So will you need to flag any of those as critical lots to make sure that you keep an eye on that?
We'll have to be on site pretty regularly with the contractor. The state is pretty proactive now about making sure no sediment leaves the site, goes into a named stream. So we'll have to be very diligent on this one to make sure we don't pollute the streams.
And what's the opinion between the two of you of making that road a public road versus a private one?
Well, like I said earlier, I think you'd be running into issues with making it a public road at this point because they designed it a certain way in their pattern book to meet how they've got it, 30 foot off the back of curb. If we made it a private road, or a public road, the setback takes effect from
the right-of-way.
The right-of-way, which is a little bit, that's going to alter the design, which means they would have to amend it at that point.
That would also hurt the utilities too, wouldn't it?
Right, well, they've been working with CUD on this. The way that they've got this designed isn't what you would see in a typical subdivision where the tanks are out front. If you look at, and Michael zoom in on one of them, you can kind of see what they're talking about. And Alan Stemke from CUD is here, so if he wants to speak more to this, he can. But you can see what they're doing here when Mike zooms into that.
Right.
Those tanks, you've got two on one building, two on the other building, and they're all kind of side by side. That's how they've decided to design that.
Clustering them all
Right.
together.
So it's unique.
More access.
And this is the first development we've seen like this, from the county standpoint. We don't run into these very often at all. In fact, this is the first one really like this that we've seen get this far since I've been with the county.
And so to his point, with this not being the same design as the St. Andrews, is that part of your thinking about why it doesn't need to be a public road?
Well, this is not a through, like you said, this is not a through street. Yeah, the people who are going to be here are going to be living here, or they have a reason to come in here.
I remember this is landlocked, basically based on, it was drainage or zoning, there was something.
Right, it's not going, the road's not going any further than what it is.
Standalone, yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
There's Stewart's Creek, and then the elevation of the ground ramps up pretty substantially on the other side of that.
Pardon me, the land on the other side of Stewart's Creek on the west side, is it dedicated to walking trails or?
That was what they were showing in their pattern book is open space, right? They weren't showing any development beyond as far as, structures and things, they weren't showing anything beyond what they're showing on this site plan.
So if it's shown that way on a PUD, then they can't change it without coming back to us?
Correct.
So they've got some walking trails all in this open area and along Stewart's Creek.
So if it stays private, Road Superintendent Brooks never has to touch it.
Right.
Correct.
And he's smiling very bigly, very largely back there.
We have a motion to defer. Any other questions?
So the main thing is if we can just find a few more visitor parking, and I don't know how he beefs up the HOA to sort of control that parking. That's mainly what we're looking for, right?
So my thought was in these areas here between the buildings, you'll have to maybe move the step tanks back and the valves back, but you've got some opportunity to add some parking, either parallel or maybe even perpendicular parking if you could squeeze them in there. And just get those additional cars off the street, room for
It's an
visitors.
opportunity to be somewhere else.
Right.
Yeah, that is a good idea. How do you do that any more than any other HOA? How do you do that when you say beef it up? Yeah.
Other questions?
But I do like the way they get those step tanks.
We have a motion and a second to defer 18-3007 Watercrest subdivision. Any other questions? Any comments?
One more comment. I do like the design, back to what somebody said earlier, I like the design of the step tanks being over there clustered together, because I think that'll be a long-term benefit. So, if we get some parking right there, I think we've got maybe a pretty good design.
Oh, yeah, this has got
Our
some.
first
Some
time
features,
out.
yes. This has got some really great features that's going to be very beneficial to learn from. But I think there's just a few minor details we need to work out.
Mike, question. The drainage that you may have a concern with in the back,
It's more of a construction
so
issue. It's during construction.
does it warrant a deferment, I guess is the question? Or is that something you just work out as they go?
The drainage, I'm not that concerned about. It's something we'll have to work closely with the contractor on.
But you don't have that number on the elevation of what they need to build at. I was thinking you
I
were
think
saying
they've
that.
added some elevations, but it's something we'll have to check with the construction plans.
Okay, I guess I thought when you were explaining it, you were saying.
Oh, this is an older version,
If it's on your
Doug says.
iPad, yeah, because you're using the agenda
Okay.
packet, not the updated.
Doug says that what I'm looking at on the screen is not the
When
latest and
we
greatest.
send what we're looking at here, we're having a problem when we first started getting ready for the meeting. The network drive we usually tie into wasn't working, and we didn't have time to get someone to come look at it. So what we're looking at here is the agenda that you all got the email about. Now, when we send that out, we typically will have initial comments back, not on all of them, but for the most part, we will. So what you're looking at here isn't the same thing you're looking at on your iPad. I guess that's what I'm saying. Typically, it is. Usually what we're looking at on the big screen is the same thing on your iPad, but we had some technical glitches this morning, so.
So, like I said before, I don't believe it'll be an issue establishing these minimum pad, minimum floors to be well above the FEMA requirements.
It appears to me by that drawing, their lowest building's about 18 feet above the base flood elevation.
Right.
Is that correct? So I don't see any reason
No,
to
there's-
be concerned about
Not
this
at all,
unless
not
they
at all.
plan on changing that elevation, changing that sheet right there. As
No,
long as
sir.
they build by that sheet, they got plenty of room for
Right.
margin.
So, yeah, you can see a 625 running through the middle of these lots, and I think the last flood elevation was somewhere.
Thought I saw 605. So.
Something like that, yeah. It's not, just takes forever to redraw, sorry. Remote it in. Yeah, 604, 605. So, yeah, they're 20 feet above that last known flood elevation.
That doesn't give me.
I mean, it's gonna go up with the ground, the creek and the ground as well, but not 20 feet.
I would love to see some more parking spaces. My concern is if our requirements only say one parking place per bedroom, and that's our requirements. Now, we need to, in my opinion, we need to revisit that and change that to, 1.15 parking place per bedroom or something. But I hate that if we're putting a requirement out there and then asking and gonna change it on the fly, I don't know that I can agree with doing that.
And again, I guess my thinking on that, Jim, is just livability. I mean, the practical application
I'm
of
with
this,
you,
because,
absolutely.
I don't know.
It's not sufficient.
Right, I mean, I can't endorse bad planning.
Well,
That's what
and,
this feels like.
and I'll say this, at this point, and the applicant has indicated a desire and a willingness to go back and maybe try to spread some of the parking around. I understand where the discussion is, and I agree. I also agree with what Jim is saying. You know, if we do have a standard and it's something we need to look at, you know, that's something we can certainly do. But they do have an approved plan development packet. You know, we have to be careful. We just can't sit here and say, okay, we want you to change this and change that. I mean, quite frankly, and this, I mean, falls on staff more than anything. That's something we probably should have caught on the front end. You know, now, in my defense, like I said, we don't see these terribly, you know, frequently, these type of developments. So, but at the same time, I mean, that's something that maybe, you know, from my standpoint, I should have looked at a little closer than I did on the front end.
I guess my thinking is, I didn't think we got into that level of detail at the initial pattern book. I thought usually, a lot of times, the pattern book we're getting into, especially when it comes to layout, it always says this is conceptual, that, you know, where we hold them, you know, are the specific things that they list out that they'll do. But on something like this, I thought site plan was the time that we got to sort of massage what it's actually
And to an extent, you can, because you generally, if they're not asking for something different than what the regulations say, the regulations that are in effect govern, you know, and I make that a point when we're talking about a lot of these smaller lot subdivisions. You know, you need to go in there and talk about how much accessory space do you want to see, because if you're wanting more than what the ordinance allows, you need to say it, because if not, we're just going to default back to what the ordinance says.
Right.
I mean, I think that applies here as well. You know, if they're not coming right out and saying, we're going to provide X amount of parking, we're just going to go back to what the ordinance calls for. And off the top of my head, I don't have it right in front of me, I don't recall them getting that detail as far as how many parking spots per unit. I could be wrong, just because I don't have it right in front of me.
And is
but-
that something we need to look at for future pattern books?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that's something we definitely need to look at, especially if we start seeing more developments like this.
Does the state hold us to the number of parking places per bedroom, or can the
That's a
county change
local,
that?
that's completely local.
So it's up to us to
Correct.
decide?
Yeah, that's not a state standard. That's local.
Perhaps we send out a memorandum to our consulting engineers in the county for their opinions and suggest that we're contemplating an increase to the...
Right, and we can, I mean, there are several ways. I mean, you know, with my involvement with our state planning organization, I mean, there's a lot of resources that we can tap into to kind of find out how other people handle this. Now, I will say this, quite frankly, in the profession, just in general, you're starting to see a push toward parking maximums as opposed to parking minimums. Just because, especially, maybe not so much with townhome developments, but more on the commercial side of things. Because typically, when it comes to retail development and different things, they're going to provide, and even for developments like this, they're going to provide typically more parking than we would ever require. But then, if you think about it, like, again, this is kind of apples and oranges, but like when you drive by Walmart during the week, in the middle of the summer, half the parking lot's not being used. You know, they're basically building all that parking for Christmas when it's packed, and you go in there and you drive around for half an hour because you can't find a parking spot. That's what they want, to make sure they have enough parking, so somebody who comes in can always get a parking spot so they don't leave.
His old boss used to say that they're designed for the 100-year parking event.
Yeah.
So, and it's, yeah, right, and there's a lot of truth to that. But you're starting to see a lot of communities kind of shy away from that and saying, okay, you can provide more parking than what we would normally require, but you can't provide more parking than what the ordinance says. You're starting to see more of a trend to that, because it's impervious area, you know, there's stormwater issues you gotta deal with, and quite frankly, you know, heat island elements and different things, there's a lot that goes into it, but all that to say, we can certainly look into to seeing if our regulations are consistent with what we see around the state.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm in agreement with Rhonda. There's nothing more unsightly and quite frankly dangerous to the motoring public and to the pedestrian public as a street full of parallel parked cars. My subdivision on Cason Lane does enforce the no parking on streets, and they're very serious about it. The homeowners association is very serious about it. But that's probably the exception to the rule. So I would love to see where we either provide more parking or pockets of parking. Because when I drive through newer subdivisions, when I see those little pocket islands of parking, I think, man, that's a great idea. I wish we could see more of that. So maybe we need to be thinking about a max parking idea or increase the number of parking per bedroom. I know that on the development side, that's going to have a anti-connotation because they may lose some lots on a big site just to give up for parking, but in the big picture, I think sellability is going to outweigh the fact that,
And safety.
yeah,
And it goes back to livability.
I'd much rather live in a subdivision that has no cars on the street, even if I have to pay more for that.
You said this is the first time we have seen over this type of development in the county, or the first one like this. So if we can work out the kinks on this, maybe that'll help in the future.
I just want to say I appreciate the developer and the engineer working with us on this. We want to try to get it right this first time out and make it more sellable for you and a better long-term, as Rhonda said, something that ages well.
Yeah. But I think, Doug, what you're saying is, bottom line is he's met the standards. And now that we see it on black and white, we're seeing some errors or areas that need to be massaged a little bit going forward. So.
And it's a, sharp bunch of design engineers.
Yeah.
We can work with them. And I think we can add some parking spots without losing units.
Right. Yeah, I see some availability just looking at the plan view. All right. We have a motion and a second, I believe, Mr. Chairman.
We do, but we're also having discussion, and it is not about to be cut off. Because this is important as we go forward. It really is. So we want to get it right. Just as Mike said, we want to get this right so that we'll have better direction to go in the future. It won't be the last one of these we'll see. Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second to defer Watercrest subdivision. All those in favor of that motion to defer, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition?
Yes.
The motion to defer carries.
Jim probably will bring this up in 2 weeks if he can.
Well, we'll see where we go. Well, if nothing else, like I said, like on the other item that was deferred, we may just have to have an update as to where we are. But I don't want to rush things. As far as if they're ready, we'll bring it forward. If not, we'll let you know why. So,
We had a couple of no's on the motion to defer. Do y'all feel comfortable with the ruling, or do you want a roll call?
It's a good ruling.
Okay, very good.
I just see who.
Let me just do an editorial. I don't want to kind of go off, but there's my family roots are down in Laverne, and I've got a brother that still lives in Laverne, and off of Sand Hill Drive, if you go past that three-way stop sign behind the new Walmart store back there, it's in the city roads, and there are homes that are really close together. The driveways are this long. Maybe you could get 2 cars in it. And there's not a single house that I'm aware of back in there that doesn't have cars and boats parked out in the yard. There are city ordinances about parking in the street, so the yards are full of vehicles. It is the most unsightly thing that anyone would ever hope for. And even with the ordinance, you can drive through there at times and still see cars and other things parked on the street. So what we're talking about today is going to be helpful for us as we go into the future. It looks like there have been opportunities for us to look at these type of developments, and since it's brand new to us, we do want to make sure that what happens in the future we can improve upon and make better for this community long term. So we appreciate the developer and working with us in this opportunity to make sure we get this thing right. Commissioner Reed also pointed out that across the road The county owns big acreage, and there are, the plans, long-term plans are for a 3-school complex going pretty darn close to this development. And so traffic on Amaville Road is going to continue to be a huge, huge issue as we go forward. As Superintendent Brooks really knows, I guess, out in that area.
I have a question about garages. For all practical purposes, most people use their garage as an accessory structure as opposed to a parking space.
Especially in this type of development.
Is there something we should consider as we look at any sort of update to our regulations?
Well, I think the thing to do would be, to see, again, how other communities handle this and whether or not they allow someone to count a garage as a parking spot.
Because honestly, if it was a 2-car,
Probably not as big of an issue,
I
right?
might give you a car. I might give you one for a 2-car garage. But for all practical purposes, very few people who have a 1-car garage park in their 1-car garage.
And I have a 1-car garage. My motorcycle parks in it, but that's about it.
Right. So that's part of what my heartburn is from. If I really thought this genuinely met the requirement based on practical application, then I wouldn't have voted to defer.
We'll work with the applicant, and we'll also research the parking.
It's where
because I know there's a lot
reality meets
of
regulation.
Yeah.
Moving on. Any other business or?
Yes, we do have several, I'll say, things here to discuss. At our last meeting, there was a lot of discussion about just road improvements in general, and there was a desire amongst the commission to talk to representatives from the city of Murfreesboro about how they handle their escrow, right-of-way dedication, and whatnot. We do have, Sam Huddleston is here from the city of Murfreesboro. I asked him to come, and I'm thankful that he is able to be here. So if you're okay, he's ready to rock and roll, so we'll kind of go from there.
Thanks for being patient, Sam.
Thank you all. Good morning. Sam Huddleston, Assistant City Engineer with the City of Murfreesboro. I do have some handouts. I'd like to ask Mike to pass those along. Just a few notes I jotted down to help with this discussion, and appreciate Doug, Mike asking us to come over and do that. Appreciate their cooperative relationship. We get together with this group on a quarterly basis to compare notes between city and county, and Greg Brooks in his office is a part of that as well, and so we appreciate that cooperative arrangement. And quite honestly, as I said in your meeting this morning and hear your discussion about site plan subdivision plats, it's no different than the discussions we have. Many of you are familiar with the issues that growth faces, and certainly infrastructure improvements is part of that. So I just made a few notes about a program we called originally our escrow account, but it's really fees in lieu of construction, where a developer, a property owner has an opportunity to substitute cash in exchange for construction. And so what I would say, first of all, is that it's always our desire to see those improvements constructed initially, day one if possible. That's not always possible, but certainly from our standpoint, especially as it relates to traffic improvements, we like to see those improvements day one so that they're there to benefit the public, to meet our objectives for the traffic or the transportation network. But there are times and situations when that's not appropriate or it's not practical, and so we've established a practice, a policy of collecting fees in lieu of. The first category I would refer to as statutory. It's in our code. If you're developing along a 2040 major transportation plan route or any of our previous major thoroughfare plans, there's a requirement for you to participate in that road construction. Right-of-way dedication, easement dedication, and then participation in the cost of improvements. And that can be constructed improvements, or it could be fees in lieu of. The second category under statutory, and again, this comes right from our development code, is if you're developing along a substandard street, and I want to spend just a moment on that word substandard. That does not mean unsafe. that means that it does not meet the city's expectation for its classification of roadway. It doesn't meet our standards for that. It's missing something: sidewalk, curb and gutter, appropriate number of travel lanes, perhaps pavement thicknesses. And so when we use the term substandard, it really is referring to meeting the development standards for that roadway classification. The second category we would use fees in lieu of would be upon development. And so those become conditions of approval, much like you conditioned many of the projects you looked at today on conditions of approval for sites and subdivisions. And so those would generally refer to off-site drainage, roadway, traffic improvements, or other types of improvements. And so that's done at the Planning Commission level. And we give the opportunity there, again, to use cash instead of actually constructing those improvements. It still goes back to the practicality check. We still go back and say, we want these improvements constructed day one if possible. But there are situations with subdivisions and sites when they're approved that we would allow participation in the fees in lieu of. And then similar to Mr. Brooks's work in a county road, we have right-of-way permits, and occasionally there are times when we would accept cash for that work in the right-of-way. In an open cut, for example, would be a situation where we might accept cash instead of them completely repaving the street. We'd allow them to do a traditional open cut. And so that would be upon development. We also have developed quite a few roads, quite a few projects by agreement. We've just agreed to contract with another party, and those generally include projects where there is mutual benefit. There's benefit to the developer, but there's benefit to the city in extending infrastructure and improving infrastructure, improving drainage, those sorts of things. The much maligned St. Andrews Drive was built that way in an agreement with Decker and Belt and Old South. And there are other roadways that we have constructed and other drainage improvements that we've constructed where the developer has given us cash rather than build the improvement themselves. And so those happen by contract. And the mechanics work like this. We relate that fee back to the approximate cost of the improvement. It's not 100% effective or 100% accurate, but we're trying to capture the developer's obligation as it would relate to city cost. I will say that the private side most often can work cheaper than we can because of the contracting requirements, bonding, insurance, different things. City work, county work under contract generally just costs more for the same items than it does in working that a private developer could get that. But there is we see those things as needing to have a reasonable public benefit for us to take that work on and improve turning lane, improve drainage system, and so forth. City participation can be a consideration. So it's not always that we're looking to collect 100% of the cost. It may be a 50-50 split or a 60-40 split based on the overall public benefit versus the private benefit or the private obligation. So we weigh those things out and say, is there an opportunity, is there an obligation, is there a benefit here to the city and to the public for us to jointly participate? Sometimes there is, and other times we're really just allowing that developer to defer that public work to a later time with the city being responsible for that. And then the things that we collect that on: roadways, curb and gutter, sidewalk, drainage system. We have two bridges that are under construction today that are partly funded this way. The city's picking up part of the cost, and the developers are picking up part of the cost. And so traffic signals, where there's an anticipated future signalized intersection, but maybe it's not time to install that signal with development, we will take cash from that developer and hold on to that cash and then put it with other cash or really city participation to build that signal at a later date. Repaving, water and sewer lines, those are the types of things that we collect fees in lieu of. And it's been a very effective program for us to to allow developers to meet their obligations, to allow the city to advance our public infrastructure mission, and then to see a public benefit and a mutual benefit to both the developer and the city. I'd be glad to entertain any questions or discussion on it.
When do you collect the money?
So we collect it with the first two items, Mr. Cush. We collect those generally upon some trigger in the development process. Approval of the site plan, signing of a final plat, issuing of a building permit, issuing of a certificate of occupancy. So within the city's development framework, our development services side, we'll pick a trigger and then condition that next step based upon the payment of those fees.
Okay.
You're talking about the price of it, government's price is a little always higher than, do you take your price or do you take developers say I can do it for this price? Which one of those do you take?
We use our access to our cost information. We have some unit price contracts with paving and roadway and utilities. We're bidding right now on the average about one project every 3 months, so we have access to those latest bid tabulations. Then we can also access other things like the Department of Transportation's construction cost, and so we're looking at what it costs the city to do the work, either to contract it or use our own forces. And so our unit prices, our contract costs from other contracts give us that level of comfort about how much a particular item or a particular scope of work would cost.
Do you have any kind of a performance timeline that you offer to meet with the developer to say he pays this money and then how long before the improvement happens?
It really varies. The category by agreement, where we reach a private contract with that party, those usually have very specific time frames by C of O, by build out, the next 2 years, date certain sort of things. For the city projects in general, those larger projects, that often requires approval by the mayor and council for the design and funding, and so it really becomes a prioritization of our governing boards, and then also availability of funding.
Sam, if you have a site development that, you have frontage road, we've had a consultant come in and chat with us about traffic shed. And in that scenario, not only are you responsible for the road in front, but sometimes to the next major intersection. In the city's view, are you just talking about from property corner to property corner that you own, just that frontage road? And if so, is it the entire road width or just to the center line, your side of the center line of the roadway?
So I'm going to use a term that our former transportation director, Dana Richardson, used quite often. That is, there was a nexus between what we were asking that developer to do and their actual impact on the system. And so there's not a straightforward answer on that, but we do look to the relationship. I understand the traffic shed works kind of like a watershed, and so there may be some participation in some off-site improvements that tie to that. But then you look at the other properties, other development, other things that also contribute to that, and ask yourself how much of that. And I'll give you an example of one we've struggled with recently, and that's the intersection of Asbury and Medical Center Parkway. There have been a couple of city developments proposed there, quite a ways from that intersection. There's been a lot of discussion about improving that intersection. And so do you ask a couple of developers who have proposed maybe 100 lots on one side and a couple hundred on the other side to foot the bill for a $2 or $3 million off-site improvement? And that seems a little bit of a stretch. That yes, there's a relationship there, but the problem exists today. The issue exists today. Were they the cause of the problem? No. Will they add to it? Yes. And so tying that back to the actual development and their impact, I think we as an approval authority would need to look at that carefully to make sure that, and I'll use this term, we're judgment proof. You know, we're benefiting the city, but we're not overreaching our policing authority, our development authority, to demand more than's really there. Our general practice is you're responsible for your frontage. There are a couple of situations that I can think of where that next downstream intersection and the roadway between the development and that next downstream intersection were so lacking that we really, to make that, and the impact was really just that development, we asked them to improve to that next intersection.
That's really where our biggest heartburn comes from, is it trying to answer that question right there. To borrow a phrase from Will Jordan, you know, sometimes these things are built on a pig path. And so the part that's going to touch their land may be minimal, but that overall impact on the system could be large. And then too, you have the, you know, that cumulative impact of future development coming in now after that first one is triggered, or if once schools are triggered, now they're all, you know, flooding in. So any wisdom or insight you have to share on how you achieve that answer of addressing that nexus, I'm sure we would all love to hear.
So the city, I guess I would say it this way, the city has been pretty aggressive in building roads and borrowing money and prioritizing for roadway improvements. And so those costs through the borrowing and through the funding are spread out generally over the community, and that includes the new rooftops that are coming in. And so part of our philosophy is that borrowing money now for the next 15 years also means that the people that are not residents of our community yet are going to help us pay for those improvements. And so there's some consideration that those future taxpayers will help retire the debt on those road improvements or drainage improvements, or for that matter, the new school we're building on the southwest side of town, this as we speak. I think the question of funding and improvements is a pretty big deal for all of our jurisdictions, whether it's the city or the county or another community. We have those same funding issues. How does growth pay for itself? And
the answer is they don't.
They don't unless you have a very comprehensive policy. And the truth is that the fees in lieu of is not a one size fits all. It's a tool in our toolbox that we use to help make sure that development does take care of some of their impact. But you're right that it probably doesn't cover 100% of those things, but it's very specific to the projects and the frontage that they have.
How long have you been under this model?
I've worked for the city now for 19 years. It was something we've been doing probably since the mid-90s. It was in the site plan rules and the subdivision rules when I came to work here in the mid-90s.
Have you ever had an issue with maybe a development piece not coming timely and, folks complaining, I paid my money, I'm not able to sell these houses because you're not improving the road that you told me you would improve? Are those conversations you ever have?
They certainly are. And when you collect somebody's money, you create an expectation of a future improvement, and so we have to be aware of that as well. But then the backside, the alternative argument is we'll give you money back and we'll allow you to go make your improvement. Yes. But sometimes, again, that's just not practical. Adding a half a lane width to an existing 2-lane road, that really doesn't. It would satisfy the obligation, but in that example, that specific example, adding 6 feet of pavement really doesn't help the issue. You can't add a third lane on 6 feet. You could only add a half a lane, and so we really look at the practicality of whether the development should build it now, or really that's something that should be reserved for a later, more comprehensive project.
And is a lot of this driven by your major thoroughfare plan?
A good bit of the statutory work is by the major thoroughfare plan and the substandard street policy. Those two probably account for maybe 75 to to 80% of the actions that would trigger under this.
What percentage of the developers in the past have said, I can't afford that, you're crazy, I'm killing the deal?
I don't, yeah, maybe that came up on a couple of them.
Most participate?
Most participate. Our numbers today, if you came in today and you were on a substandard street, and you said, okay, do I build or fees in lieu of, a typical fee in lieu of just for that frontage would be in the $125 per linear foot range. The cost for the city to build a complete 3-lane curb and gutter section roadway with utilities is $750 per foot or $375 per curb foot. So you can see that most often they're getting a pretty good deal.
Would you say that again? You budget $125 a linear foot for?
That would be a typical fee in lieu of, and the costs have escalated in the past 12 months on us about 25%. So that's a
okay. And $375 was what now for curb?
A typical cost for the city to build a 3-lane curb and gutter, a complete street from scratch.
And what was didn't you throw a 700 and something number out there?
750 per foot of roadway.
Okay.
So you two curb feet for every roadway foot.
We mentioned fees in lieu of, and I've heard the word impact used at least a dozen times. Does the city collect any, quote, impact fees?
We don't currently have impact fees.
Do you have that flexibility?
We do. And the enabling legislation in the form of city government really has something to do with that, and certainly I wouldn't have an opinion on the county's ability to do that, but our city attorney has opined that we do have the ability to use impact fees.
I mean, this is all good discussion, but, and help me to understand from the standpoint of, and I'm looking more from the county side of it, I'm looking at my representatives on the commission, county commission, but, I mean, we're limited to what we can do today as far as collecting any other, and we've been down this road several times, correct? I mean, other than what we got today, that's not much more we can do without a change in legislation.
Well, we've looked into the fee in lieu of before. Now, of course, anytime we wanted to talk about the possibility of enacting a new fee or something like that, that is something we'd want to run by our legal staff to talk with them about. But you are right. Our powers in the county are very limited as far as new impact fees, development taxes, things like that. We've got what we've got, and trying to put another one on there, depending on how it's structured, is difficult. It's a lot more difficult than it is for the cities. They have a lot more flexibility than we do. Does this fall under that particular camp? That I'm not so sure about. We would have to get some legal opinions on that before instituting. I know we had talked about this, oh goodness, probably 10 years ago or so. I remember having a small committee formed, and we looked at several things. We even had our finance and budget director, Lisa Nolan, came and spoke to the group about the possibility of enacting that. And from their standpoint, it's pretty straightforward. It's just a matter of, do we have the legal framework available to us to actually create a fee like that? So that's I think the $1 million question, so to speak.
Sam, where does your money get housed? What department houses that money until it's needed?
Well, our money counters house that. It's actually, we collect that money, we send it down to our finance department. They put it in designated accounts. It is not earned, if I can use that term, from an accounting standpoint. It's not earned until we actually complete that project. So they are truly held out in escrow. They're not used for any other projects. They're not, I guess they add to the fund balance, but really those funds are not used until we actually complete the work and earn that. And then generally on the year that we complete a project, we'll earn all of those things, and then they'll be used either to retire part of the construction cost or repay a loan or whatever's appropriate at that time.
So they're restricted for use.
Correct.
Are they restricted for use on that road?
Correct.
Okay.
We don't intermingle.
So it's so specific
it's so specific that it's that road and generally that particular frontage. So we don't use it on a road, half a mile. We don't use it on half a mile down the road, and we haven't traditionally done that. But in the situation where there are off-site participation, and signalization is a good example of a place where off-site participation would result, because the signal could, it could be a half a mile away, but that particular development would want access to that signal for their benefit, an apartment complex or a shopping center or something like that. Yes, we'd love to have a signal out there. We'll give you fees now if you'll install that signal later.
Any other questions for Sam while he's here? Thank you for your time. And
Thank you.
It's an issue that the city has been addressing for quite some time. The county has been struggling and will continue to struggle, it looks like, for this point on. That adequate roads and the development is going to be a huge issue. I know our road superintendent is well aware of those, and we are well aware of those, and have been trying to explore additional resources, and we run into obstacles that is almost impossible for us to overcome. And every time we talk about the need for additional funds, just to support the growth and the infrastructure to support that growth, always falls back on property taxes. Property taxes, property taxes, property taxes. And it's an issue that we struggle with. The County Commission struggles with. It's just I'm not saying it's a nightmare, but we're headed toward a nightmare if we're not there already. Any other questions? Doug, you have anything else?
Just a couple more things. One thing, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mike here because I know he's got something he wants to talk about as well. We had talked about during the agenda regarding some of these plats that have right-of-way dedication. The way the subdivision regulation is worded, if a plat requires right-of-way dedication, that automatically falls under the major category and requires planning commission approval, which is why we see so many of these 1 or 2 lot subdivisions come through. A lot of them have, older deeds, and a lot of these deeds have or their property lines go to the center of the road. That's just the way it's been done for years. It's not so much how we do it anymore. The newer subdivisions and everything, there's dedicated right of way off the plats and everything. But these older deeds that have been around for so long. So typically when we see a plat come in, like a couple of the 2 lots that we saw come in earlier today, whenever there's just dedicating the right of way from the center line 25 feet in to make a standard 50-foot right of way, at least that portion of it, that automatically requires planning commission approval. I don't believe that was the intent that we set out with when we were doing the subdivision regulation update several years back. The intent really was if they were dedicating right of way for larger road projects, stuff on a major thoroughfare plan, those kind of things. But the language is pretty cut and dry, black and white, if you will. It says right-of-way dedication required, boom, has to go through the planning commission. What I would like to know is if the commission would be comfortable with us bringing back some amendments. There are little things we want to tweak with the subdivision regulations anyway, but if this could be one of them where we could tweak that for these situations where the only reason it's coming is because they're dedicating a portion of the right-of-way from where their deeds go to the center of the road in 25 feet. That's the only thing we need for dedication. That'd be something we could look at administratively. That would save them coming to you for review. And most of the time, these little 1-2 lot deals that are like that they're in good condition. The 2 or 3 that we saw today, they were in good condition beyond that. We could have signed off on them. They could have been recorded and been on their way.
So the only reason those were up here today, and I had that question in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was it.
Why did Doug sign off on these administrative?
Because of the right-of-way dedication. That was it.
Only look about.
So if you're okay with this,
sure.
Okay, very good. That was really, and that's something we'll have to figure out how to word that in the regulations to exclude that type of situation. Like I said, that was really never our intent. When we started seeing this happen, whenever that was, a couple years back, when we started really making sure we got the dedication, if it went to the center of the road, seeing that dedication 25 feet off the center line, that's when we started realizing, well, I don't think that was really what we meant when we wrote that. So we would still exclude all the other ones for larger road projects, new right-of-way dedication, additional right-of-way dedication on things. But if it's just as simple as, your deed goes to the center of the road, we just want the 25 feet in.
Essentially, the two we saw on Shady Lane, you could have,
Correct.
y'all could have signed off on.
Yeah, both of them, they were on Shady Lane, yeah.
With the exception of the right.
Correct.
I have one question, and maybe Superintendent Brooks needs to, are there ever any cases where we would not want to accept right away?
I can't think of anything, Greg, unless Greg's shaking his head. I mean, it's a prescriptive easement anyway. I mean, the county goes out and maintains it regardless. It's not,
Yeah, it might be a private road that was not built to county standards.
Been there, done that, learned it.
Right. If that situation,
We
right,
might not want to
right.
do that, so,
Yeah.
I mean.
But we'll come up with some language, if you guys are comfortable with it. That was really my question, along with some other tweaks we're thinking about doing. That was one of the things I wanted to ask you about, just to make sure you were okay with that. So.
But if it's on a street that we're maintaining, the county's maintaining, but the deed goes to the center line of the road, it's just something that we would ask that they clarify when the plat comes before
I would
us.
hate for somebody to find a back door to say, I can get the county to fix this if I give it to them, and this is a way to require them to take it.
Right, and we would be cautious as far as the language goes. Like I said, like Mike said, if it's a situation where this is a substandard road, the county doesn't maintain it now, if it's not on the county's road book, we're probably not going to ask for right-of-way dedication for something like that. But if it's on, like Mike was saying, if it's on a road that is on the road book, is already being maintained, I mean, it just makes sense to have the right-of-way that we may not have currently.
And you may want to work into that language, let's say you want to reject a road. You may want to work into that language that they have the opportunity to appeal to us if they disagree. I mean,
Yeah.
or not. I don't know. I'm just,
I see where you're going with that, yeah. Fair enough.
We probably need some verbiage with the highway department
Yeah.
included in that. I
Right.
mean, since they would be the ones maintaining the roads.
And we work very closely with Greg's office anyway, so we'd be happy to craft some language with his input.
Mike, did you have something?
Yes, on a happy note, I'd like to announce that our stormwater project engineer, Katie P., has passed her professional engineering exam.
Yay!
She is a full professional engineer, no longer an engineer in training, and she has demonstrated herself as an asset to this county, and we're tickled to have that designation with her.
She's going to want a raise now.
Yeah, yes, that's automatic.
Sounds like
But,
another party.
Yeah, join us with congratulating her after this meeting.
Well done.
Very good.
That's all I have.
Anything else, Doug? No, sir.
I have one thing I'd like to say. Sure. It was on the front of the paper yesterday. I've not read it, but I know the man well. I just want to recognize Don Odom. Anybody that gives 50 years to this county.
Yeah.
And that does the type of job that he has done, particularly as superintendent, deserves recognition. So if you see him, tell him congratulations.
I have one question before we go. Did we put money in the budget this year to update the major thoroughfare plan?
Yes, we did. For fiscal year 18-19, yes.
But I just want to make
Yes,
sure
we
I
did.
thought we had.
We sure did.
I will say this, I was up Lebanon Road the other day, and Cutoff Road is blocked off from Lebanon Road, and they are working
They
to
are
improve that
working. I
intersection.
think we're waiting on some utility relocations on the power poles.
They were working on it when I went by. So.
Good.
Our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, the 9th of July. That will be a 6 p.m. Meeting in the second house of the historic courthouse. And once again, just another editorial from your chairman is that I've been involved in this longer than any of the staff that's up there. Craig has been involved in this planning commission, and to see the upgrades from a staff perspective, from a management perspective, and in addition to that, the upgrades that we've had as years have gone by, and this planning commission is astounding. Just the type of things that we're going through right now that may not be everything according to the book is what we need to be looking at for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and not just what's right now. But we have to really start looking at what this place is going to be like. We saw a report, I believe, through Health and Ed just this past week that indicates our current population is somewhere in the neighborhood of 315 to 318,000 people. And the projections per year goes up to where it's just mind-boggling. And we have to have opportunities to put these people in the right spot in the county and to provide the services that they need. It's a struggle to find a way to meet the demand that the growth that we have now and the future growth is going to present us. And staff just looking at what we need in the future, I commend you guys for staying on top of that. And it's helpful to us. It makes our job a lot easier to see how well prepared you are for these meetings. It makes our job much, much, much easier. And as we look at new things like these townhomes, to get those questions out on the front end is going to be very helpful to this commission, and I think to the staff as time goes by. And we're going to be looking at more new things too as time goes by. So thank you, staff, for everything that you've meant this year. Thank you. And as we're getting ready to go into a new fiscal year, I hope that whatever the budget requirements that you have will be met and needed. And if you need this commission's help in getting some of those budget requirements through the county commission, you let us know, and we'll see if we can make those things happen. It's going to be real important, the work that you do in the future. And that goes the same for this commission. I am really, really, really proud of you guys for looking not only as the best interest of the citizens of the county, but what you want this county to look like as time goes by. It's important, maybe more important to your kids and your grandkids. So stay on top of it, and I'd encourage you to do that. We once again have asked to look into the possibility of and you might remember, I asked Doug to look into the possibility of us being able to take this 9 o'clock meeting off in July, and it appears that we have more work than we can probably get into one meeting, so we're not able to accomplish that. So we'll have 2 meetings in July, 2 normal meetings in July. Once again, thank you for your time, your patience, and your participation. Sam, thank you for being here, and with that, we're adjourned.